Yeah, what it do? Hello, today I'm going to show you how to grind freehand and with a jig. This video has got it all. There will be grinding, diagrams, a winching, a carrot, some vicious ass bunnies. Oh, and we got a contest too. 9 of you will win a knife blank, while 1 of you is going to get this 80 CRV2 knife we're about to bevel together, you and me. So stay tuned for details, and in the meantime, prepare thine loins for grinding. Now, if we're going to grind a knife, it means we need a knife blank. This is knifeprint.com, where you can go to Doodle Designs for free and export that file in various usable formats, or have Knifeprint cut it out in a popular knife steel of your choosing and send it to you directly. There's a pro-level set of features here for a few extra dollars that adds full CAD functionality and the ability to make designs private. You can follow the link below and use the code GREENBEETLE for a discount if you want to make me rich beyond your comprehension. And we all want that. Now let's talk about having your designs cut out. Whether you use Knifeprint or another service for multiple knives, this is a no-brainer. Here's me printing, cutting out, pasting my design on steel, then profiling it and drilling out my own holes. We'll see how long it takes. "54 minutes for one blank." Yeah. You probably have an aluminum pattern made up and your mill set up, and I bet under the best circumstances, you still have 30 to 40 minutes just in whipping up a single blank. For multiple blanks, it quickly becomes cost effective for your time to have it water jet, plasmid, or lasered, whatever you decide on. Now, once this blank is in hand, I realize doing a recurve is not the best place to start for a grinding tutorial, and I don't like the placement of these pinholes in the back either. So it's back to our software to change those things, and then we'll get on with our grinding tutorial. Center lines. These are the 2 methods I use. Both require either machining die or a permanent marker along the edge. And then I either use this purpose-made center scribe that one can find at a lot of knife-making stores. I don't like it that much. There's a better method using a drill bit. Almost any size will do. We're going to flip the blade over and mark both ways, so even though our drill bit didn't find the center with one pass, on the second pass it'll mark a center path. It's a little bit wider than a single line. I greatly prefer that method. Yeah, I almost forgot. Now you need a grinder friend. The best way to justify the purchase of one of these to your honey is to point out how useful they are in, say, the kitchen. For example, all I had to say to my wife was that she could finally spend less time peeling carrots, freeing up more time for her to do the laundry. I love you, Sweetums. I'm sorry. Seriously, these things are great for processing salads.
Hey, baby, I peeled the carrots.
All right, jig grinding. This jig is from creativeman.com.au. I used one of their carbide file guides already. You can build your own, or if you're going to buy it, look for some of the following features already found in this particular jig, such as being non-magnetic, so grinder dust doesn't stick. Stainless, so you can dunk it in water. This has an easy to adjust on the fly grind angle. It works with their carbide file guide. The 2 can be purchased together for a pretty good deal on the creativeman.com.au website, or you can build one out of a door hinge in wood, like I did when I started. The right belt is critical. Before you grind, you'll want to select the belt and make sure it's right, good, and sharp.
But what's 2 plus 2? What's the formula for the area of a circle? Explain quantum entanglement theory in layman's terms. Hang on.
But seriously, a good way to check for sharpness is to gently run your finger along the edge of the belt while the grinder is turned off, but be very careful. Steve, no! But seriously, using a jig isn't dummy proof. It still requires practice. You can 100% Kaiserschmutz a knife with a jig. In general, you set the bevel and grind to your midline mark along the edge. If you haven't worked far enough, back up the blade towards the spine at the same time, then you reset the angle and keep going until you're happy, and then your angle is set for the next side and all the following knives you do with the same shape. There's not that much left to talk about jig grinding. From here you'll go into thermal cycling, then a quench, then finish grinding to follow with or without the jig at that point. Here's my quick take on the pros and cons of a jig. It's quicker to learn, much easier to get faster, repeatable, symmetric results. There's no reason not to use a jig if you're making more than one of the same knife, in my opinion. On the flip side, they're expensive. Not all blades can be jigged. It's easy to burn your work or ruin your temper during finish grinding because you're not touching the blade to gauge how hot it is, especially if it's a thin blade. And in the end, of course, you must still learn to freehand. Freehand and woot, free willy, y'all. Here's what I do. First, we scribe a center line. Bleak. Then if it's just that single line, I'm going to grind within about 20 to 30 thousandths on either side with a steep angle, narrow grind, just to sort of, quote, set our bevel. This is the first of several grinding planes we'll use. Its purpose is to keep you from grinding too far past center along the edge. Here's our second grinding plane. If you look at the side view in the top left corner or at the ricasso area, you can see that we've used a less acute angle to start grinding the middle portion of our blade. We aren't contacting our final edge, and we aren't contacting our final grind line along the spine yet either. We're in between. As we apply pressure and grind on this plane, material is removed, and our grind lines are pushed simultaneously towards the edge and the spine of the knife. In a perfect world, this is the last plane we'd establish, and it would reach the edge of the knife and the desired bevel or grind line at the spine of the knife simultaneously in one go, but in reality, I game it so it contacts the edge first, and then I use a third or even fourth plane to slowly doctor the grind line back to its final position along the spine of the knife. Now this next part was really hard to film because there's not much room around my grinder for a camera. But with a little ingenuity, I was able to invent a new device for filming point-of-view action sequences. I call it a little SoPro camera. And as you can see, it works really nice. I got some people I'm talking to about it. I'm going to sell this design, I think. It's part of being a genius, y'all. Alright, the knife blanks we designed on knifeprint.com have been laser cut from our ADCR V2 and shipped to my door. So let's take one out and freehand this bad boy. Centered. Home. I always freehand with a carbide jig in place now at the plunge line to keep them straight and symmetric side to side. After not using one for many years, trust me, this is way easier. It's not cheating. You need a file guide anyway, so just do it. So now we're going to take our first deep cut and push against our center line on each side. In other words, we're going to take that narrow angle cut and push right up against those scribed center lines along the edge. And we'll do both sides. So now that we're right up to our scribe lines along the center of our edge, it's time for our second plane. We're going to put it sort of right here. And I'm pointing out that there's a gap there. So as you see in this picture, there's a gap between the edge and the belt. I'll put a red line there. If we looked on the underside of the knife, we would see a similar gap. In other words, neither the cutting edge nor the spine of the knife is touching the belt. Applying pressure now will make that second plane that we're after. Now, if the edge is touching the belt visually, like in this picture, and we apply pressure, we're just eating away at that edge and pushing the grind further and further towards and even past that center line that marks the center of our edge. And that's really not what we want to do at this time. So this is what our second plane looks like. We're going to stay on that plane, apply pressure, and work towards the grind line in the back and the edge simultaneously. Here we are, second plane is pushed up against the cutting edge and our grind line really isn't far enough back towards the spine of the knife, at least not in this case. So it's time to start on another grinding plane, in this case our third. Well, alright, what'd it do? Our rough girn is complete, so we're going to check some symmetry. You can get out calipers and measure things, but I usually do this while I'm grinding at the grinder, so I generally use my fingers on either side of the blade to mark landmarks, such as the ricasso height. I also go to the front of the knife and mark where the grind line meets the spine of the knife and make sure that that's symmetric. And for kicks, you can do sort of mid knife grind height there. We're still rough grinding, so things don't have to be perfect, but they have to be close enough that the heat treat doesn't induce warping due to asymmetrical grinding, which is a big issue. If this were a very thin knife, I would probably want to make sure that it's very, very, very close to symmetric. I might actually measure in that case. So that was an 80 grit belt we just used. Prior to quench, I'm going to take this to 120 grit and get some of those deep grind marks out. That's about usually the grit I quench from. I think a thinner knife, you might go a little finer. All right, we're at 120 grit, so before winching, I'm going to do some final checks on symmetry here, just eyeball this thing. And for our own edification, let's check the width of the edge. It's at 60 thousandths, which is really as thick as I quench from. I'm often a little closer to 40 thousandths, but this is sort of a wide, lean blade, and maybe thicker is safer in that case. All right, our knife is hard, so we're going to temper it. Then we're going to start our finish grinding back at 80 grit, then 120 grit, 200 grit, before moving to these gator belts. I'm going to start this around 65, A65, A45, then A30, which is 200, 400, 600 grit as best I understand. Gator belts are pliable and forgiving. There's less belt bumping at finer grits, and they don't get as hot. So Stuart Smith has a great video on how to reduce your hand sanding time by using these belts to an ultra fine grit. He does a really good job of explaining it, so I'm going to refer you to those videos. You very badly need to watch those. It has cut my hand sanding time in half. In this case, I went straight from the A30 belt to 500 grit sandpaper, followed by 800 grit sandpaper, and it done. Thank you, Stuart Smith. I missed a spot right there. That's all right. We'll go up a belt or two and grit and then come back down. No biggie. The Trizact belts will really do that pretty quick. So that's it. We did it, you guys. We all have new grinders. We know how to use them. Now, here's how to win a blank of my knife design or this 80 CRV2 custom with brass liners ground in this video. So go to knifeprint.com and design a knife for free. Post the design on your Instagram account and tag me at Green Beetle Knives and knifeprint.com at knifeprint_. Knifeprint and I'll choose the winning design and send you this custom built knife you see here. 9 runners up will be sent one of these knife blanks for free. You don't have to make the knife to win. Just draw out something that looks great and post it on your IG account. Again, only tag myself and Knifeprint. Winners will be chosen in 2 weeks or so. So get to Deer German. Oh yeah, have a good one.